Back on the Chad Hasty Show. Joining us on the phones right now, Republican strategist Matt Mackowiak joining us. Matt, good morning. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. And I guess let's start on the statewide level. There's a lot of stuff to tackle today. You've got the Texas legislative session, which will kick off at noon today. I guess just to get your overall thoughts going into this session, what are your expectations for this session?
Well, I guess the biggest thing to say is obviously the statewides are beginning a new four-year term. It's not a session like it was 2 years ago where everyone was thinking about primary politics and then general election politics. So everyone's freed up to really focus on the big issues. And I think given the fairly negative election result Republicans saw around the state, there's a renewed focus on really the major issues. It's not going to be as much about wedge issues or other things. It's really going to be about property tax and school finance as much as anything else. And so I think with a new speaker in Dennis Bonnen, who's a very serious, substantive guy, he has a lot of respect, a lot of knowledge, a lot of experience. I think there's renewed optimism that even though these two issues are really complicated and really difficult, there's a kind of consensus desire to solve both of them, or at least to really move the ball in the right direction over the next 140 days. Whether they can solve both of them without a special session, I think, is an open question right now. It might be hard just to do just one of those issues, let alone both. But actually, the most important development, I think, is that basically most, if not all, the members in both houses now recognize you can't do one without the other. Just doing a property tax reform effort throws school finance out of whack, and just doing school finance doesn't really address property tax, which is really the number one issue for most Texans. So that recognition wasn't really there 2 years ago, particularly in the Senate. They wanted to really just do property tax by itself. So that's what I think is going to dominate this session. There will be other issues. Water's going to be a big issue. There'll be talk about a state spending cap. There'll be talk about, reducing the franchise tax on business. There'll be other things that bubble up here and there. But really, this session is going to be dominated by those two issues. Is there a rollback rate election if property taxes go above a certain percentage? Are there appraisal caps or appraisal reform? These kinds of things are all going to be part of that discussion. And of course, in a lot of rural areas, but really maybe even more so in urban areas, the education professionals want more money for education, so there's going to be a debate about whether there will be additional accountability. So, look, both these issues are really complicated, but there's a real desire, I think, to solve both of them over the next 140 days, and I think you're going to see most members really focused on those two issues more than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, you just go through any article in the last 2 weeks leading up to this session, and it seems like everyone is surprised at the lack of the bathroom bill or other maybe red meat issues that we've seen in the past, sanctuary cities, anything like it. You're not seeing talk of any of that pop up right now. You're not seeing a bathroom bill. You're not seeing even a lot of talk about E-Verify or anything else. I mean, it is property taxes and school finance, and really everything else is taking a back seat to those two issues, it seems.
Yeah, it's an eat your vegetables kind of session, and I think that's a good thing. The legislature needs to be focused on the most important challenges facing the state. That's why they're there. It's why they've been elected to office and given that responsibility. And it's not like these issues have come out of nowhere. Both these issues were looked at last session. There really wasn't a consensus on school finance, so the governor set up a school finance commission that worked for the last 2 years to really hammer out a path forward. And on property tax, there's obviously been a lot of work done there as well. The House and Senate both passed property tax reform plans last session. They were a little bit apart, and they couldn't get together and get an agreement. And I think there was also, as I said before, concern that school finance wasn't part of it. And so, putting more pressure on the counties wasn't going to work. So. I agree with you. I mean, there has not been talk about a bathroom bill. I think that's a positive thing. Keep in mind, 2 years ago, the legislature was operating under an executive order from the Obama administration that basically said school districts can do whatever they want and they can set whatever policy they want as it relates to bathrooms. That executive order, wasn't theoretical. You had the Fort Worth Independent School District and the Dripping Springs Independent School District both issue their own guidance, or really changed their policy overnight, much to the concern of parents. That executive order has been rescinded. So there wasn't a problem before the executive order, and there's not a problem now. There's no reason to pursue the bathroom bill, and that's why I don't believe it's even been filed, and I don't think it will be. So I agree with you. I think you're not going to see quite as much focus on some of these second and third tier issues. You're going to see the bulk of the time spent on these big things, because it's going to take that amount of time. It's going to take 140 days to address both these issues, and maybe one or two special sessions, and that's not because of recalcitrance or people not playing well together. It's going to be because it's just so complicated, and they're trying to find a way to do this where no one constituency, no one geographic area gets unfairly hurt or unfairly burdened, and it's very, very difficult to do. But I'm reasonably confident they're going to be able to get a good outcome here, because I think all sides really want it.
Last topic for today on the Texas Legislature. How do you think the relationship is going to be? Obviously, in the last legislative session, it was fractured between the governor, lieutenant governor, and the speaker. There was a fracture there between the governor and the speaker. We're going into a session where it seems like we got a kumbaya moment, that everyone's liking each other, from the incoming presumptive speaker, Dennis Bonin, to Dan Patrick, and to Governor Greg Abbott. Is this going to be a better relationship in this session, you think?
I do. The relationship between the speaker and Speaker Strauss and Lieutenant Governor was really broken at the end of last session, and that was building over a period of years. They just see the world differently, and really have different priorities, different ways of operating, and that relationship was just severed and really pretty dysfunctional at the end. And so everyone's starting over now, and I think Bonin is someone who's going to be very focused on solutions, focused on policy, focused on outcomes. Not going to play a lot of games, play a lot of politics. I think he's made commitments to open the House up. If bills have majority support, even if he opposes them, he's going to allow them to get a vote. That may not sound revolutionary, but it is after the last four sessions where that really hasn't been the case. So we'll see. I mean, look, I don't want to pretend like it's going to be easy.
Right.
And Bonin is known for having had something of a temper. It's apparently gotten better in recent years. But look, these are strong executive types that have strong opinions, and they have their own politics they're trying to manage, their own conferences they're trying to manage. The margin in the House is 83 to 67, so they've got what is that, 8 votes, I guess, or 7 votes if you have to get to 76. So, and in the Senate you have 19 Republicans, and you need exactly 19 votes to move a bill to the floor. So both leaders, the Lieutenant Governor and the Speaker, are working with pretty narrow margins. And so that'll add to the degree of difficulty both will be trying to deal with. Let's
take a look real quick at the national level. Obviously, this is day, 18 of the government shutdown or partial government shutdown with no end in sight. How do you think this is really playing throughout the U.S.?
Yeah, it's a great question. One of the things, look, I understand why the president's doing this. This is one of his signature campaign promise. The Democrats are playing, games here. Basically, I don't really think they oppose additional border security. They may oppose, a specific, 10-foot or 20-foot wall across the entire southern border, but that's not even what's being proposed now. I mean, the president basically has admitted he just wants it in urban areas, not in rural areas. Yeah. And so I don't really know anyone who's serious who believes that's a bad idea in urban areas. We already have one on the border between San Diego and Tijuana, and it's been very effective. So this is about semantics. It's about neither side wanting to give the other side a victory. The one criticism I'd have of the White House is I don't think they've done enough to move public opinion in the last, month. That starts, I guess, tonight. Maybe they thought the holidays would be a time where they really couldn't, break through. But with the national address tonight, with him driving down to the border on Thursday, my hope is they can put a spotlight in a factual, kind of black and white way. What is our current border security situation? How serious is the threat? How many criminals have come in? I mean, with really good bulletproof numbers, that's what we really need. So I hope that process begins today. Look, I do think this will get resolved in the next few weeks. The Trump wants $5 billion. He got 1.3 last year, so you can imagine somewhere in the middle there. If they wanted to do a bigger deal with some immigration reform elements in there, perhaps legalizing the DACA population, that's one thing I think that there's some bipartisan support for in the Senate. So we'll see where it goes. But, both sides have to come together and compromise a little bit to try to get a deal done, because you have to have a majority of Democrats vote for something in the House, at least 60 votes in the Senate, and the president to sign it to end this. And the Rubik's Cube, where you can have all three of those things happen at once, is going to require compromise from both sides.
Yeah. What do you want to hear from the president tonight, and do you think this will be resolved by the State of the Union address on the 29th?
Yeah, great question. I do think it'll be resolved by the State of the Union. It's just hard for me to imagine the optics of the president giving a State of the Union address while the 7 or whatever it is, 4 or 5 agencies are shut down. I just can't imagine that. I don't think it's in his interest to be there, with those kind of optics. What do I want to hear tonight? Again, I think he's got 8 minutes, so I don't really want to. I don't think a partisan speech is what will work. I mean, he's really got to rise above that, make this about national security, have it be very factual, very substantive, kind of just coolly presented. Just the facts, ma'am, kind of thing is what I think would be most effective tonight. Maybe even offer an olive branch to the Democrats to some extent. Look, this is a question of, is he moving public opinion? Because if he moves public opinion, he may be able to soften some Democrats to try to open up the negotiation. I do believe there are real talks happening beneath the surface. The Democrats asked for a list of what the $5 billion would go towards, and the administration's been providing exactly what that is. So they're starting to talk specifics a little bit, but they've got to start making more progress more quickly if we're going to get this ended by the end of the month before the president gives a State of the Union on the 29th.
Yeah, Matt, tell folks how they can sign up for your morning newsletter, and then also what your latest podcast topic is on.
Yeah, the morning newsletter is called Must Read Texas. We take all the news from around the state, deliver it to your inbox by 9 a.m. every weekday. We've got 3,000 Texans who subscribe. You can sign up for a free 1-week trial at mustreadtexas.com. The podcast is called Mac on Politics. It's in the iTunes Store, on Google Play, on Stitcher, and now on Spotify as well. Most recent episode is with Steve Forbes. We talk about the economy. He has some interesting thoughts on the shutdown, tax cut, trade, China, the Fed, et cetera. Great episode, so we hope you check that out as well.
Yeah, very good, Matt. Always good to visit with you, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Look forward to it. Take care.
All right, that's Matt Mackowiak here on the Chad Hasty Show.